The Shrew and the Loo. This is a story that has been entirely made up by families who took part in Babbling Vagabonds' online story-making session in August 2020. We've partnered up with the Buxton Museum, who supported us by supplying wonderful objects. The objects were a Blue John egg, an axe head, a Roman pot, a bonsal brooch replica, and a Roman god statue. We looked at the objects and decided what they were and then how some of them would be put into our story. Here's our story. Once upon a time, in the beautiful county of Derbyshire, nestled amongst the green hills, was a delightful small town, famous for its waters. It was called Buxton, and one of the many lovely buildings it possessed was the most marvellous, amazing museum. It was a treasure trove crammed with incredible and interesting curiosities. People travelled from far and wide to marvel at the museum's bear, bask in the beauty of the Blue John stained glass window, and recoil in horror at the gruesome shrunken mermaid. However, in this museum there was a certain something that nobody knew about, for if you were to sneak in after closing time and climb the creaky wooden stairs to the top floor, you'd find a secret door hidden from the world. And if you opened that secret door and crept up the crooked spiral staircase and then wobbled up the rickety ladder, you would eventually arrive in the attic. Here, beneath the magnificent beams, were long forgotten trinkets and old display cabinets full of dust. And if you were daring enough and wandered to the furthest corner, you'd find an old skeleton of a dinosaur, and beneath this skeleton there lived none other than a queen. And because of where she lived, she was officially called the Queen of the Dino. But everyone who knew her called her Tessa. She didn't live alone though. She was kept company by a black panther called Esmeralda, a shrew called Sharon, a little monkey known as Thief, who was incredibly light-fingered, and finally Rob, Tessa's alien friend. Living in the museum was quite wonderful, but there was one thing Queen Tessa longed for. Days would come and go, and only a handful of people would walk through the front doors, completely unaware of the magical collection of royals, animals, and aliens that inhabited the attic. Each day, Queen Tessa would hide upstairs and look out across the town and wish for her museum to be busy and full of visitors like it used to be. Then one day, as she looked from her attic window, she saw the biggest, darkest storm approaching her little museum. This storm was so angry and so cross that it had already flattened Solomon's temple and had rolled around the town, uprooting the trees in the park, causing chaos and calamity at the Crescent, and it was now hell-bent on unleashing its anger on Tessa's beloved museum. Quickly, she grabbed her phone to call the sun. Surely he would be able to shine some light on this stormy situation. Drats, she couldn't make the call. That ferocious storm was making mayhem with everyone's phone signals. She needed help. She needed to come up with a plan, and fast. She could hear the thunder booms getting closer by the minute. She thought quickly and then remembered that throughout the museum there were things from long ago that lay forgotten, misplaced and lost. Artefacts that had magical powers. She frantically tried to remember if there were any objects that might help make the storm disappear before it reached the museum. Then Esmeralda, the Black Panther, reminded Tessa of her magical egg, the egg that would answer your most difficult questions in times of need. Quickly, the Queen tapped the egg in that oh-so-special way that would make it reveal the answers to her most pressing question. Everybody held their breath and waited. Nothing happened. Then suddenly, whispers came from the egg and climbed their way up to Tessa's ears. Go to the basement and seek out the oldest and smelliest toilet, it said in a barely audible rasp, and search out what you need, a statue and a sundial. The magical egg spoke no more, and Tessa put it back in her pocket. Queen Tessa had to do one thing she hadn't done in years, decades even. She was going to have to leave the attic and pass through the museum down to the basement. Nervously, she opened the door. The museum was creepy, and to make things even worse, the lights weren't working. How on earth was she going to see anything? How was she going to find her way down the stairs, let alone the old toilet? Thief, the light-fingered monkey, passed her a candle, but alas, no one had any matches to light it. Tessa hated the dark. She shook with fear as she stepped into the inky black. Another step. Ah! She couldn't see her hand in front of her face. It was too dark. Dejected and defeated, Tessa sat on the top step, wearing the saddest face. "I can't do it," she said, as tears rolled down her royal cheeks. "I'm too afraid of the dark." Rop, her alien friend, tapped her on the shoulder, and his big smile lifted her spirits, if only for a moment. Sharon the Shrew ran around her feet, offering squeaks of encouragement, and as she stood back up again, Rop beamed a wonderful smile. He was proud of his friend for finding courage. He took her hand and offered to go with her. As the pride he felt for Tessa grew, he began to glow a bright, luminous green. "Oh, Rop, you're lighting the way! We can use you to find the object," said Tessa. Sharon the Shrew darted off, leading the way in search of the oldest and smelliest toilet in the basement. After a few wrong turns, they reached it. At last! They searched as best they could, but they couldn't find anything that would help. No statue, and definitely no sundial. Suddenly, Sharon the Shrew squeaked excitedly and pointed her shrew nose into the bowl of the toilet. Rop, Esmeralda and Tessa peered into the smelly loo. There, in a pool of yucky brown toilet water, was gloopy covered objects that looked like they could just be a sundial and a statue. Everyone looked at Tessa. "You mean I've got to put my hand in there?" she said with a look of horror. Her friends nodded. Tessa rolled up her sleeve and tentatively began to reach into the bog. Suddenly a rat ran up her arm and hissed at Tessa. Esmeralda battered the rat off into the darkness with her black paw. Tessa once again reached forward, and suddenly a grumpy frog jumped off the toilet seat and plopped into the toilet, sending a gloopy splash of gruesome toilet water up into the face of the brave queen. "Ugh! This is the most disgusting thing I've ever done," said Tessa, wiping the foul water from her cheek. Now, without any further ado, she quickly plunged her hand into the murky, smelly water, and she felt around in the toilet bowl. Slimy and thick and cold, but she kept searching with her fingers until she felt something cold and metal. At last, was it the sundial? A further rummage in the horrid water found the statue. She fished them out, and Rop handed her an old tapestry he'd found to wipe her hand on. As the thunder rolled outside and lightning flashed, the gang climbed back up the basement stairs and gathered around Tessa as she looked at the artefacts. The storm rattled on the stained glass windows and the wind banged at the door to be let in. Suddenly, the strange little statue began to sing. "Thunder will go, thunder should go, thunder please go." But would it be in time? No. The storm let out a huge, deafening thunderbolt. Lightning struck and the top of the museum roof was ripped off. Tessa screamed and started to run around in terror. Esmeralda jumped behind the museum's bear and trembled and shook in fear. Rop, the alien, began to flash red in alarm, and Thief the monkey froze like a statue. Nobody knew what to do, when suddenly Sharon the Shrew sprang into action. Without a thought for her own safety, she took the sundial in her tiny jaw and tossed it high into the air, into the storm. The ancient object skimmed and danced as it flew higher and higher until it disappeared into the very centre of the angriest cloud. Suddenly, the noise of the thunder stopped, and it went eerily quiet. The whole world seemed to be on pause. Then a booming voice roared from the clouds.
"Oh, that really hurt! Not fair! I'm going home!"
And with that, the grumpy storm stomped across the moors towards Macclesfield with a roar and a growl. The little statue began to sing again. Plant the egg and let things grow. All the creatures of the attic looked at the egg in the Queen's hand. What would it grow into, they all wondered? A giant chicken? A strange tree? There was only one way to find out. So Tessa went to the front of the museum and buried the egg in the ground. Then an incredible thing happened. Beautiful flowers began to spring up faster than fast, a wonderful canopy of colour and life that made the already impressive entrance to the museum even more beautiful. Behind her, Tessa heard voices cheering and clapping, and when she turned round, she saw a crowd of people had gathered to see the magical flowers. She had saved the museum and the town from the great storm. Word soon spread about Queen Tessa and her heroic friends, and the museum became the first open-top museum in the world. People came from far and wide to visit the museum, and Queen Tessa marvelled as her beloved building became busier and busier. Tessa was so proud of her little friend the shrew that she made a statue to celebrate her, and they all lived happily ever after. The end. The Shrew and the Loo was crafted with help from the following people: Natalie, Owen and Matthew, Abel and Fiona, Darcy Smith, Georgia and Harry, Harriet and Toby, Phil and Tallulah, Wilf and Wren, Fiona and Walter, and Tom and Frankie. To find out more about Babbling Vagabonds, you can visit our website www.babblingvagabonds.co.uk. You could like our Facebook page, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter, or you could subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.